Welcome to Haunt Tech Tips, the source for technical advice to take your haunted attraction to the next level. Here's your host, Chris Gay.
Welcome back, everyone. Hope you're all having a great summer, getting your haunt props and projects underway. In this episode, we'll be discussing LED strip lights. I've been experimenting with these lately on a few different scenes and projects we have underway for the Trail of Terror. So it's a very unique way to light up your scenes. It's an easy way to light portable props from within, and since it's LED, your battery life should last quite some time. A nice bright light, various color options. It's all low voltage, it's all low heat output, so it's a relatively safe way to light a scene without bringing in an electrician or extension cords everywhere, so on and so forth. There are various types of LED light strips out there. Light tape, those are the two typical names you'll see. There's other names out there. But the typical type that us haunters will deal with, it is a paper, plastic, or some variation thereof paper with surface mount diodes on it. There's waterproof, there's indoor only. There's a large variety of these. Initially, these became popular for vehicles. You would see the tuner cars that have the underlights, things like that. It's easy to hide LEDs using this tape because it's flexible. And the vehicle ones, of course, were 12 volt DC. They were mostly waterproof, or if they were interior, they might not be waterproof. But they were somewhat tough to be able to hold up to people interfering with them, and just the motion of a car, so on and so forth. Now, though, if you go on Amazon, eBay, you can see a ton of various kits out there. The surface mount diodes have changed things a little bit just because they're so small. They require a small amount of power. A single surface mount diode LED can be multiple colors. Red, green, blue is typical, although there are single color strips out there. You'll find the single color kits are substantially cheaper than RGB, but again, you're only paying for single color LEDs instead of tricolor LEDs. There used to be LED strips where there would actually be 3 single color LEDs in a row repeating, so red LED, green LED, blue LED, repeating again and again, but now it's mostly tricolor RGB LEDs filling the entire strip, which just makes for a more smooth, uniform color output. And also, if you're changing colors, it doesn't dance around nearly as much. It dances around a millimeter, which is barely perceptible, versus, a couple centimeters, an inch, back and forth as the colors change. You'll see when you're looking these up, there's usually a number in the description, and the manufacturers and sellers are horrible about explaining this number. You'll see it be 50-50, 35-28, 28-35. That is the size of the diode, the LED light chip, in millimeters. It doesn't make a huge difference for us. The 50-50s are pretty common amongst the tricolor RGB LEDs. Although any of the sizes should work fine, the tape is usually about the same size, about 1/3 of an inch across, maybe 1/2 an inch, depending on the tape, and as long as the kit is. You'll also see some of the kits are cuttable LED tape, some are not. However, some of them that say they're not cuttable are lying. The $5 Walmart kits that are very popular right now, they're actually USB powered for lighting behind a TV, but as we found, you can work with those in props using a phone charger battery just fine. Those, they say right in the manual they're not cuttable, but if you look at the tape closely, there's actually lines marked out where you would normally cut them at. And if you cut there, obviously power off, you don't want to short anything out. I tested it out, worked just fine after I cut it at the cut line. Be careful with it though. If you cut one that says it's not cuttable, it will definitely void your warranty, that's for sure. And when I say cuttable, I mean the strip is able to be cut with scissors to trim it to length. So if you're buying a, say, 30-foot strip and you only need 20 foot of it, you can cut it somewhere around the 20-foot mark. It's going to be wherever there is a cuttable link in the tape. And you'll typically see it'll be 3 or 4 gold-looking flat areas on the tape, which is actually just a connection point. These connection points are useful just beyond being cuttable as relinking points, because there are some different connectors out there available. There's hard connectors, soft being just a wire, the hard connectors being a straight or angled connector that you can slide the tape into if you strip off the surface material, which there's usually some sort of coating, be it a wax, be it a rubber, silicone, some sort of coating like that to protect the diodes. But if you clamp down on that or solder that together, you can connect these together and keep it running in line. There's also splitters out there, and there are waterproof connectors for those of us trail and outdoor haunters. So with these connectors, you can either make the hard turns, you can extend, you can connect multiples. It gives you a lot of options on how to install these and how to install them cleanly, specifically if you're a long-term installation, not someone just putting it up for a season and tearing it right back down. The power supplies for these, most of the kits you'll find online include a transformer, and it'll either be a small wall wart size transformer, or some do include larger power supplies, look like a laptop power brick, usually 3 to 5 amps in power. You'll want to keep this in mind when you're buying your LED strips, because if you plan to use more than one strip, you're going to need a power supply that can support, obviously, more than one strip. It's much better to have a slightly higher current supply that can support more than one strip rather than several small supplies. Although that does depend on your setup. If it is a small area, you might be able to use a bigger supply with a splitter and have multiple strips come from one power supply. That's great. If it's spread out throughout a scene, you might just want the single individual supplies. There are LED strips out there that use just alkaline batteries. It could be your AA's, AAA's, whichever. I've used that on some smaller handheld props. I wasn't too happy with the quality of the battery compartment on it, but that was just a kit I had a couple years ago. And the battery life was decent, although you are going through batteries. There are, like the USB power kits, the Walmart $5 kit, uses USB power, so you can either plug it in a computer, or in my case I used an Anker brand cell phone charger, and that worked great. So you can put that wherever you like, switch out your rechargers nightly, because again, a cell phone charger is using large lithium-ion battery cells that are going to hold quite a bit more of a charge and run the LEDs much longer than just some AA's, AAA's. There are CCTV style power supplies. If you have more specifically, this would be for single color LED strips where it's just white, just red, just blue, so on and so forth. You can power them off of this, although keep in mind the voltage. These do come in 5 volt, 12 volt, 24 volt, so on and so forth. So you have to match that up. But if you have single color and a lot of single color LEDs that are staying constantly on, you might look into CCTV power supplies. And there are pro-grade controllers out there that will power your LEDs as well. I believe Fright Props makes one. It's an RGB LED controller, and it's just outputting to each individual channel is a one color art, red, green, or blue. But also keep in mind the wiring on these. It's typically 4 wire, one for red, one for green, one for blue, and then a positive, which essentially it's just a negative switch. Once the switch completes the circuit, the color turns on or off. You can also find some other controllers out there that are either Bluetooth controlled, DMX controlled, or other proprietary devices. Again, these are for the most part made in China. There's a huge variety, and when I say proprietary, it's just the way that manufacturer did it, not necessarily a copywritten, patented technology. But again, low-end electronic controllers could be set up anyway from device to device. So getting back to the LED strips themselves, there's 5 volt USB power, which typically is designed for backlighting a TV. There are some of those made for cars that you're plugging into a cell phone charger type plug. But the 5-volt ones are the Walmart $5 kit, and those are great inside of props, handheld items, portable items, because you can put that USB cell phone charger to it with a battery, a Anchor rechargeable, any lithium-ion cell phone charger. Although, watch your current. Even the Walmart LED kit says only $5, it's not that long, requires, I think it says 2 amps to be maximum brightness, and not all USB charging ports can do that. A lot of TVs aren't going to support that. But again, with an RGB LED, unless you're running it full white, you're never at your full current and your full brightness. So if you're just red, theoretically, you're only using maybe 3/4 of an amp of that full 2 amp current draw that could be done at full bright whiteness. There are 12-volt LED strips. These are great for outdoors because if they're waterproof, obviously, you can use these with a battery. When I say battery, I mean a lawnmower battery, a car battery, or a solar-powered large battery bank, however you want to do this. And this lets you have LEDs out on a trail hunt without having extension cords, so on, out to your location, because again, it's low voltage, low current LEDs you can just run for hours and hours off of a single car battery. Although if you're doing it this way, please put a fuse in line to the battery, because if something were to happen, you don't want the full current of a car battery dumping through your LED tape, because that could zap someone pretty good, start a fire, or who knows what other issues. You could also use these with your lead acid alarm batteries. Although if you really go pound for pound between the cost and capacity of an alarm battery versus a economy, let's say Walmart car battery, you're probably better off with that Walmart battery. It's obviously a little more current, a little more price, but a whole lot more capacity versus your alarm battery. So it's a topic for another episode. But if you have batteries sitting around, you don't need a battery to be good enough to start a car to run some LEDs. So anymore, when I buy a new car battery and they want to give me that $12, $13 for a core charge, no way. I'm hanging on to these batteries and they go right into the haunt for things like this. Also, some of the LED tape lights are 24 volt DC. 24 volt has an advantage just because when there's more voltage, there's less current required, so you can have a greater distance that your LEDs can run in a single series setup where it's one connected to the next. 24 has an advantage for that, but again, you're not going to find a 24 volt car battery unless you go and put 2 batteries in series, and that can get a little hairy if the batteries aren't perfectly matched. So I would recommend, if you're going 24 volt, just stick with the 24 volt power supply. But again, you can get a lot of distance with that. And do check from manufacturer to manufacturer, device to device, on the maximum distance you can connect these LED strip lights together. Because your issue, A, you need a power supply that can support how many ever you connect together. But B, the LED tape is only so thick. It's not made out of heavy gauge wire. Even though, yes, it is low current, it's only LEDs, you could exceed the carrying capacity of the LED strips if you connect too many together, and again, cause it to burn out, cause LEDs to have low voltage and either be dim, not run, or fry your controller. That's also very possible. So be careful with that. Check with the manufacturer instructions. For your controllers, there are different options. They're single color, which if you have a scene that you just want to have a green glow to it, per se you have a laser swamp and you want the outside edges to just glow green, you could do that. Really any color. Some are better than others, these controllers. Some it's just red, green, blue, adjust the brightness, color mixing, which is fine. Some of them give you preset colors. It might be 8, a dozen, some colors, and rather flexible, but not the best in the world, because again, if you have RGB, you can mix thousands of colors and they're only giving you 8 or 12. Some of the controllers give you flash options. Actually, most do that, where it can flash from color to color. It's oftentimes 3 flash or 7 flash, so it's flashing red, green, blue, or red, orange, magenta, basically colors of the rainbow. It's best you can mix with just RGB colors. There are pattern options out there, so it might fade through, it might fade then flash, it might brighten, darken from color to color. They call that breathing sometimes. Various different programming options. Some are sound reactive. Those can be pretty neat, especially if you have a clown tint scene, something like that. Some have speed controls, so you can control the speed of how quickly the light flashes between colors, or how quickly it fades, how quickly it breathes, how quickly it progresses from pattern to pattern. There are brightness options, although I'm finding for the most part the brightness only works on single color modes. Brightness usually doesn't affect the flashing or the patterns. Not always, but usually it seems like brightness is somewhat limited. And I've recently picked up a strip that had strobe options, which turns the LED strip into a single color strobe light. And you're able to not adjust the brightness, but you could adjust the speed of the strobe from a very slow, deliberate strobe to very nearly conventional strobe light strobe speeds. So that was kind of neat in its own. There are also a few out there that have do-it-yourself programmable modes. These are neat in that you can pick a color through color mixing, and then whenever you select that mode, it will return to the color that you picked. There's no real display here, but per se you're on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 to 20, 1 to 30. You can adjust each LED diode in the surface mount diode and pick the color you like. So per se you wanted a orange color, you would turn up your red and your green, and that would give you an orangish. If you wanted a bright white, it would be max red, max green, max blue, and that'll give you a white color. It's just RGB color mixing. It's not going to be exactly perfect color reproduction. If you follow any DJ lighting, for the most part, they have advanced to RGBA, which is red, green, blue, amber, or RGBW, red, green, blue, white. The real fancy ones are red, green, blue, amber, and white now. And that gives you a much smoother color mixing palette. The reason that our TVs are red, green, blue and produce a better color scheme than these LEDs do, if you just look at the number of pixels there, obviously there's some processing that goes on in the background, so you have colors offsetting colors that aren't perfect. But again, we're looking at a $15, $20 LED tape light, so it's not going to be perfect color reproduction, but usually good enough for us haunters. So when you get into buying these, again, I mentioned some are waterproof, some are not. And keep in mind, even if you're buying a waterproof kit, that means that the LED tape itself is waterproof, but for the most part, the controllers, the power supplies are not going to be waterproof unless they specifically say that in addition to waterproof LED tape. So keep that in mind, that you're going to need to have some sort of water or weatherproof enclosure for any outdoor installations of these, even if you do have a waterproof kit. You'll see some go as far as IP ratings. I'm not sure how well factory tested these are. It's a good claim. The IP rating, if anyone not familiar with it, is ingress protection. And for the most part with these, you'll see IP60, IP64, IP65. The numbers progress, and IP6, the first digit, means that it is protected from dust ingress. That doesn't take all that much for something like an LED strip light. Dust ingress is pretty easy because for the most part these are sealed inside of some sort of clear rubber or similar material. The second number in the IP60, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, those numbers on a scale of 0 to 10 let you know how much it is protected from water ingress. 0, so IP60, is not protected from liquids at all. So obviously that would be an indoor only installation. IP61, protected from condensation. So outdoors, if it's in an enclosed environment, it's not going to get rained on, but the weather changes, it's foggy, things like that, it'll be fine with that. IP62 and IP63 are protected from water sprays at certain degrees from vertical. That's a rough number, just because, hey, if it's going to rain, at what angle, hard to say. IP64, water spray from any direction, that's getting better. If you're protected from water spray from any direction, you are protected from rain or somebody with a garden hose. So that should be fine, unless obviously they have the hose and they're doing something ridiculous, direct sprays, whatnot. IP65, IP66 is low pressure water jets, high pressure water jets. IP67 is immersion between 15 centimeters and 1 meter. That's kind of a silly number, because they would assume it's protected from immersion between no centimeters and 1 meter, but I'm just reading the chart. IP68, long-term immersion up to pressure, and IP69K is from steam jet cleaning, which doubtful you'll run into that, but I have seen where professional power wash cleaners have ruined electronics before on job sites, so it's a thought. For the most part, you'll see these will be IP64, IP65, meaning that they can handle the rain. And if there's no IP rating, just assume it's indoors and it's not waterproof at all. I would recommend, if you're buying any bulk amount of these, if you're indoors, you can save some serious money if you don't go with the IP rated devices, just because they're not manufactured to that high of a standard. If you're outdoors, get everything IP65 or IP64 at the least, just so you know that your devices aren't going to get ruined by a little bit of rainfall. The adhesive on these as well hopefully will match the IP rating. They're, for the most part, on the cheaper kits, the adhesive is just whatever the manufacturer put on there, but you will see some are using 3M very high bond adhesive tape. That stuff is great. It is a gold standard among vehicle installers, and stuff just works. Obviously, clean your surface before you mount. If you're mounting this to a dirty surface, something like that, it might not work. You might put some very carefully installed wire staples or whatnot around it, just so it won't totally fall or fail if it does come apart. But again, look for that 3M very high bond tape as opposed to the Chinese unlabeled special tape. Again, nothing against the Chinese, but some of these are cheaply manufactured and some of them are a little better with the 3M tape. Further, you'll see different spacing of the LEDs. Looking at these, the spacing is more application dependent than anything. If you have larger spacing, you're going to have slightly spottier light. Again, depends on the diodes, how wide of an output they have. For the most part, it's a pretty wide, unfiltered, and unaimed light. It's just emitting light in all directions from the diode. If you have a very, very tiny handheld prop that has a small area, small aperture, something like that, or you want a very smooth light that looks like it's emanating from the full surface of an object, something like that, you'll definitely want to get something with much smaller spaces. With larger, longer tapes, like the 30-foot tape we have a review of on our YouTube channel, the LEDs are actually spaced out pretty well. It's a couple inches between each diode. But if you're doing a large room, large area, this is fine. The best way to do this is to use a setback when you install it. So you could hide it behind trim, hide it behind furniture, hide it underneath a table. Whatever effect you're going for, you really don't want the tape to be visible. Especially also watch for reflections. And not just reflections via a mirror, but if you have a shiny surface anywhere in the scene directly within view that is opposite the LEDs, you could have that create a reflection as well. But you'll hide these somehow. Or say you have a ceiling you'd like to light up, put up crown molding, but don't put the crown molding all the way to the ceiling. Have it be slightly lower than the ceiling. Install the LED tape either on the crown molding or on the wall above the crown molding, and then have it flash across the ceiling, and that way you'll get an awesome glow on your ceiling and this tape will be totally imperceptible. You can't see it directly, and there's not going to be any reflections to show it. You could do a wall the same way, have your moldings be slightly spaced out from the floor or from the ceiling, and have the tape facing up or down. If you have a prop that you want to have a glow to it, again, just mask around the tape just enough so that the light has room to spread before it makes contact with the wall or the floor surface beneath it, and that way you're not going to have the spotty LED light that gives away that it's just LED tape and not a true ethereal glow coming from the unknown. So that is LED tape lights in a nutshell. There's a lot of possibilities with these for props, for scenes, for trail haunters especially, just because, again, low voltage waterproof, you can do a lot with that. It's all about being creative, planning ahead if you want to light a scene with this, so you have your setbacks, you have your hiding spots, your props have a place for the battery pack and for the LEDs inside, so on and so forth. You could even incorporate these into costumes, put it underneath a layer of tulle material or something like that, and have it light up a costume. I'm not saying it's going to survive the washing machine, even if it's IP rated, but just a thought. You could definitely do some pretty unique things with these. I have a couple reviews on our YouTube channel of different kits I've played around with recently. So far, so good from all those kits. The Walmart one did have a bad solder joint in it, but I was able to identify and fix that pretty easily. So hope this helps, and get to building, everyone. October will be here before we know it.
Thanks for listening. Go to haunttechtips.com for show notes and more.